Hello and welcome back to another episode of Terror Talk. Returning with us is Jimmy Pressley. And we are here today to talk about an iconic pop culture phenomenon film by director Steven Spielberg, the 1975 film adaptation of Jaws, which was originally written by Peter Benchley, based on a true story. And I don't know if a lot of people realize that. Did you know that Jaws was based or inspired by true events?
Yeah, the Jersey Shore shark attacks. I actually saw a movie on that in a documentary. It was really interesting.
Yeah, it was, and I thought, man, that would be really cool. They can still take that and make a whole new movie out of it, and it would be really intense. I mean, it was pretty terrifying what had happened. I know it wasn't at 1920s or early 20th century that happened.
Yes. Yeah, it was a long time before the novel Jaws, and I think that was, I don't know what they had as far as equipment back then. I know people have been fishing for big fish for a long time, but this wasn't really a big fish by any means, not like in the film, but it was a killer, and I couldn't imagine how much harder it must have been tracking it, because I know they ended up having to track it, I think, into rivers also, off the ocean. So I mean, that to me is scarier than what they could do nowadays,
So Steven Spielberg, 1975, it wasn't his directorial debut, but it was definitely the film that got him more than noticed. I think it actually made him a household name.
It's so funny because anybody that's read the book or seen the documentary knows that they spent the better part of a year filming that movie, and it was a nightmare, and the shark really did, malfunction more time, more, it never worked, and they really spent a lot of time sitting around and having to change things because the shark didn't work, and in doing that, they created, and what, in my eyes, probably the greatest film of all time. I can sit there and watch every frame, every second, and not take my eyes off it, never lose interest. It just blows my mind still.
Yep, and there's so many things that they did back then that were new that have become standard today, like not showing the shark until well into the film. Now, when there's a villain, a lot of times it's not shown until further along. And a lot of people may or may not realize that the reason they did that was because of the shark always giving them problems. So they couldn't use it as much as they wanted to, so they had to be creative on how they were going to do their scenes, like the scene with Chrissy in the beginning. I mean, how much more terrifying is that, not being able to see the shark, or as they called Bruce? I mean, how terrifying is it? She's in the water, she's alone, she's naked. The guy she's with, obviously he's passed out on shore, which worked in his favor, but it was just a really terrifying scene. All you can hear is her screams, the splashing of the water, and the marker in the water going off. It was, what an amazing shot that scene is, and I still compare that to other strong opening in films like Scream, that had a great strong opening. To me, Jaws is one of those films where the opening hasn't been topped. It's still among the best opening scenes to me ever.
It is, yeah. I mean, I've had nightmares that were similar to the beginning. I wasn't as close to shore as Chrissy, but I have nightmares where I'm out at sea and it's dark like that, and you can barely see the sun setting in the twilight like it was, and it's nothing but the black water and just nothing around me though. And you go underwater with the goggles on, you look and you think you see something just in the distance fade into the darkness, and you keep feeling and seeing little fin, like maybe was that a fin over there popping up, and it's just, it makes you, it's like using your mind, that's what they did, and they succeeded in doing so.
Yes.
It's scary.
It is scary, and and it's funny too. It holds up when you watch it. You would think, oh, it was a puppet. It's got to look horrible after all these years, but it really doesn't. It doesn't take you out of the film when you're watching it and you see this mechanical shark. Yeah. And I'll go back to Quint when he's. Spoiler alert. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie since 1975, I don't feel bad about spoilers, but Quint gets eaten while he's on the sinking boat. And I don't look at this movie and I think, okay, that's a puppet, that's a mechanical shark. I'm taken out of the moment. I'm taken out of the film because all I can concentrate is on this fake shark from 1975. No, when I watch this movie and when Quint's scene comes up, or when Alex Kittner's scene comes up, even though with that all you see is like the fin when the raft is flipping, you're not taken out of this movie with the effects of the shark. Even today, you're watching it and you're thinking, okay, that's a shark, not okay, that's a puppet. So it really, really held up really well over the years, over the decades. It's held up really well. It looks really good. And I think if they were to make a movie today with a mechanical shark, it wouldn't be as acceptable.
No,
it wouldn't be as legendary is the word that comes to mind. It wouldn't be as legendary as the effects that they used in the 1975 Jaws. And I think that has a lot to do with Spielberg being so successful because, I mean, watch Jaws and see it. It's an amazing film.
It is. I think Quint's, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I was just going to say Quint's death, just speaking on that real quick before we move on, is probably, out of all Jaws films, all four of them, and every other shark movie that's come since, I think it's probably the most gut-wrenching deaths by a shark, or maybe even any sea creature I've ever seen in a film to date. I mean, I can't compare anything to it. Honestly, it makes me cringe still.
It does. And one movie that came awful close to it that wasn't a Jaws film, I'd like to definitely keep the conversation on the franchise, but I do have to give a mention to Deep Blue Sea. The first time I watched Deep Blue Sea, that was an intense film. That was really well made. I think that's probably the closest I've seen a shark movie come to the suspense and the terror that Jaws gave us.
Yeah, that's my number two.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal film. Now you mentioned Jaws 2, 3, and 4. I have to say, Jaws 2 is actually, out of all of them in that franchise, is my favorite. I remember watching that as a kid. It scared me so bad, especially with the kids on the boat and they're kind of like trapped, and you have Tina and Eddie in their little situation, and Tina cowering after Eddie's death. Again, spoiler alert. But she's cowering in the boat, and how terrifying must that be, knowing that you're in the ocean, you're helpless, and there's this thing in the water, and I don't even know if she realized what it was because she didn't actually see it, but what a horrifying position to be in.
Yeah, I remember when another spoiler, Chief Brody and his deputy, and Brody had been fired at this point, and Ellen, his wife, they show up, they find Tina's boat, and they get in the boat, and he asks Ellen Brody to come in to calm her down, and she does finally scream, the shark, what's out there still, and she screams, and honestly, to date...
So she did see it, that's a good point,
good point. Yeah. It scares me. I mean, she looked truly terrified, and... Yeah,
her performance in that was very good, very chilling.
Yeah, it was. I think Eddie's death may be probably the second or third on my list of shark attacks of being so just intense and guttural. You just kind of cringe watching it.
Yeah.
You see a lot less, though, than you did with Quint, but it's still just as intense.
Mm-hmm. And I think Jaws 2 was the last of the... and I laughed because it's the last of the serious installments, because then part 3 comes along and you have this great concept to bring the shark to SeaWorld, but then you got this shark it's not even CGI, they didn't have CGI then. You have this shark visual effect where it like comes up to the glass, it swims in slow motion, or was the camera supposed to be in slow motion? But regardless, it taps the glass with its little fake Jaws pointed plasticky nose. The water comes pouring in, and the shark just sits there. Why is the shark pulled in?
Right.
And I think for a moment it smiled.
it looked like it smiled. You're right, but on that note, I was 3 when Jaws 3 came out, so I saw it probably when I was 4 or 5. I was really young still, and I remember that mother shark honestly scaring me more than anything when I was a kid. Just the way she looked underwater. Other than that crazy smashing in the glass scene, she kind of sucked in water, and when she did, it sounded like she was growling underwater. And that honestly, it scared me.
And that the whole underwater scene where the tunnels where you can watch the sea life, and they're trapped in there, and it's filling with water. That was a pretty intense sequence. When I went to see it, I was probably 12. My Aunt Carol took me to see Jaws, and I remember watching that, and I'm thinking, okay, this is terrifying. And then I was introduced to Leah Thompson in part 3, and I developed a very long, still-standing crush on her. And I think I saw Jaws 4 at the theater 4 times, and it wasn't necessarily for the shark. I think it was for Leah Thompson.
I love Leah Thompson is what I carried away from that movie. I had a kind of a crush on Bess Armstrong, but not so much. Obviously, Leah was kind of like the one, and I followed her after that too, even as a kid, and I still do. And I got to meet her a few years ago, and I talked to her about Jaws 3, and she's like, not many people talk about that movie. But she was really nice.
Yeah, I bet she was. She's very cute. And I remember when the shark I remember when they went on the bumper boats, I thought, please don't let her get killed. I really like this character.
Right.
And then when the shark attacked, I thought, son of a bitch, she's gonna get killed. And then when she lived, I was like, oh, thank you. But now we talked about the original with Chrissy, and then we talked about Eddie and Tina and how terrifying that was. I think part 3 actually has the most horrific death scene, and that was when the guy.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, swallowed whole.
Yes.
But not all the way. He's just left in the shark's mouth, and he's just crushed.
Just Philip Fitzroy. Yes.
That to me was the most horrifying death. It was just so brutal.
It was, and the surprise at the end. I mean, when the shark opens its mouth, and you still see him sitting in her mouth, holding the grenade that he tried to pull the pin on. That to me gave me nightmares also as a kid. That him sitting in there dead, and it's stuck in her like gum, so to speak. It was,
No, the camera shot also when Fitzroy was in the shark's mouth, and they showed from inside the shark out. That was such an amazing shot. That some of the shots in that movie and some of the situations in that movie make up for the cheesiness of that movie. And you know, we got like a great cast. We have Louis Gossett Jr. and Leah Thompson and Beth Armstrong and Quaid, and
it was like, how can you go wrong? Damn it!
Right, you really can't. You have to accept it for what it is. And to me, part 3 is a guilty pleasure. And then part 4 came along, and I'm like, okay, now we have a shark in
the
freshwater tropical Bahamas. That makes okay. How is that even possible? And there's a psychic connection, and the shark is screaming, roaring, and Ellen has this telepathic connection to the shark. And I don't know how do you deliberately drive a boat through a shark? I don't know.
That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. I'm going to tell you, that was the first movie I saw in theaters. It was in 1987 in July. And I loved the first 3, I told you. And I saw the trailer for it in the middle of the night one night. I was awake, scared to go to sleep in my bed. Thought Mrs. Voorhees was going to be under my bed to stick me with an arrow. So I was asleep in the floor, looking under my bed, and then I heard a trailer. I was traumatized by Mrs. Voorhees. But I saw the Jaws, the Revenge trailer, and of course I flipped out. So my stepdad, we saw it on opening night, and me being 7, of course, when I went to see it in theaters, it was like the greatest movie I'd ever seen. Then my dad, my real dad, he brought me the paperback, and I read it as a 7 or maybe 8-year-old. It might have been the next year, and it made a lot more sense than the film, because there was actually points in the book where it talked about someone being pissed off at one of the Brodies. I think it was Michael, the oldest son, and they put a voodoo curse on him, knowing about their history with sharks and the shark attacks at Amity when they were kids. They put a voodoo curse on them, and it actually called this shark in. And so Jaws, the Revenge, was actually the revenge of someone else, not the shark. So in the book, it made sense. And they just keep all that out of the film, so it made it look really hokey. And to me, other than the shark blowing up in part 1, the original theatrical version and what you can see on AMC every now and then, where the boat pierces the shark and comes out the other side of it, and the shark is like
version. That was the version I saw too, because that was when Mario Van Peebles' character came.
Right.
Well, actually, he died. That was the original
Right.
ending where he didn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
But the audience reception of him was so good that they didn't want him to die, so they brought him back.
Yes.
And that's when they redid the ending, and we got the cheap explosion,
which was shit because it was half footage from part one,
and
half a baby shark.
Exactly. It's like, what kind of shark family is this? But you watch when they're in the water at the end, you can tell they're in a pool, and the water behind them is lapping up against a wall, and that was really, really bad. I will say there was a few good scenes that opened strong with Sean being killed in the beginning, and that whole scene when he's in the water and Christmas is going on behind him and everyone's singing Christmas songs while he's being taken under the water, and that's the last we see of him. It started strong. It's got some good characters. It's got Judith Barcy in it, bless her. Rest her soul, that poor thing. But she played a cute character, and her scene on the banana boat was pretty intense when the shark went for her. And then, of course, Hoagie was fun. I didn't like Ellen in this. I liked her in the first two. I did not like her in the fourth one. I thought she became kind of annoying. But Lance Guest, of course, he's always good to see. I liked him in The Last Starfighter and Halloween too, so it was good to see him in this. And like I said, Mario Van Peebles' character was likable. But overall, part 4 is my least favorite. Part 2 is my number 1 favorite. But the original will always have that place in my heart.
Yeah, the original is a classic. You can't go wrong, and it's just I'm glad Spielberg. I don't know if you're aware of that he took the ending from the book and considered it, and what they did is Quint threw a net on the shark after he harpooned it, and the net somehow gets wrapped around Quint's leg, and as the shark goes to the bottom, twisted up in the net, it pulls Quint over, and Quint and the shark drown, and Spielberg is like, I want more of a punch for an ending. And, of course, you get the famous "Smile, you son of a bitch." The air tank line. And I thought that was it was an ending where when Brody cheers on that mast that's sinking below the water, you cheer with him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to need a bigger boat was not scripted. It was ad-libbed, and he just said it while they were rolling the scene. And they loved it and they used it. Now it's become a tagline in so many movies. We're going to need a bigger this and we're going to need a bigger that. And thanks, Roy Scheider, for that.
Yes, I agree. I love that. One of the best ad-lib lines of all time.
Yep, absolutely. But thank you again for coming on to this episode and talking about Jaws. And I look forward to chatting with you again with Hocus Pocus 2, as we talked about on our last episode. And have a great evening. And again, I just wanted to remind people that you're an author with you have a book on Amazon called Bloody Halloween. It'll soon be available on audiobook. So head over to Amazon and check that out, and keep us updated when it's available on audiobook for all those who prefer to listen rather than read.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. We got great talent, so I appreciate you having me on. It's been really a blast reliving the whole Jaws franchise.
Yeah, it was great. I love Jaws, and I really enjoyed talking about it with you. Thank you again for being here.